If you're trying to figure out how much to charge as a copywriter or how much you should be paying a freelance copywriter, you're in luck because in today's video, I'll be going over different rates for things like direct response, content writing, technical writing, and more. I've been copywriting for over 8 years, and I've also outsourced content and copy to freelancers. So I have a perspective on both sides, and I want to share what I've experienced, but also what the data says about how much you should charge and pay as a freelancer. Let's talk about copywriting first. It's normally billed on a per hour basis. PayScale found that the average copywriter makes about $40 an hour Canadian or roughly $30 US, which isn't actually too bad if you're an entry-level writer. And that's what I always recommend to my students and people that reach out to me is that you probably charge between $25 and $50 an hour to begin. It's a really good beginner rate. And then you raise that as your skill grows, you increase your portfolio, you get testimonials, case studies, things like that. But according to the Professional Writers Association of Canada, the average advertising materials actually billed between $75 and $150 an hour, which is a bit closer to what I charge. Also, some copywriters charge a day rate. This is really popular as well, where essentially they charge a flat rate per day based on how much work and hours they're putting into it. So for example, if someone charges $200 an hour, then since there's 8 hours in a working day, they charge a $1,600 day rate. And I know that seems like a lot for some businesses, but when you see copywriting really as an investment, that's when things change. Because everything from sales pages, websites, newsletters, and everything in between uses copy. And when you have someone that really understands consumer psychology and science, they can turn any kind of copy and material into a cash machine. Also, something that I love, and it's what I tend to do the most, is per project fees. So what you can do is take your hourly rate, look at the project, and estimate how much time and energy would go into it, how much value you're delivering, so also consider the ROI, and then you just charge a flat fee. You might charge 100% upfront, or what's more common is to charge 50% upfront and then 50% after. Some writers will even charge a royalty fee, so this is really common with direct response, where with big campaigns, they'll charge anywhere from 1 to 3%, maybe even more just depending on the project and the client. What's really good about doing this with bigger projects is that eventually you can add passive income with copywriting. And a lot of people are so used to just charging by per hour, per project, things like that. They forget that they can actually add a passive income stream with copywriting. Now let's move on to content writing. So if you're using SEO content to grow your business, or you're a freelancer looking to provide that as a service, it's normally billed on a per word basis. And to be honest, I would advise moving away from this eventually. Now, essentially the practice of charging per word actually comes from journalism. When you write for magazines like the New York Times, Forbes, things like that, they normally pay their writers per word. It might be 50 cents, 1 word, a couple dollars per word, which is amazing because if you're charging $1 per word and you write 1,000 words, that's $1,000 from a single article. And that's great when you're writing for magazines, and that's just how that industry works. But I recommend that if you're doing SEO content writing, blog writing, anything like that, you actually move away from per word writing because it doesn't really take in the value and everything you're truly contributing and giving to the client. And also it can create a conflict of interest because as the writer, you may want to write more words because you get paid more, but the client may actually want you to write less so they don't have to get charged as much. Sometimes though, genuinely, especially for SEO content, you do have to write more words, 2,000-3,000. So that has the merit, but still sometimes the client may not want you to write that much because then they have to get charged more. Instead, what I recommend doing with SEO content writing is that you focus more on doing monthly retainers. So what's really good about this is one, it just simplifies it for you, the client, but also it guarantees you income month after month. So for example, you might package up 4 blog posts, a certain word count, and other deliverables for X price. And then you can give that to them. And then every month it's very defined what you're delivering. You know exactly how much revenue you're bringing in, and it just simplifies everything. Some data has actually found recently that the average writer is getting paid $500 plus for a 1,000 to 2,000 word blog post, which is funny because that's actually in the higher range too, according to the study. So that means most people are actually making quite a bit from blog writing. And then on the opposite spectrum with short content, the average writer is getting paid $300 to $500 for short blog posts. So you can use these as benchmarks. So let's say if you're going to offer 4 1,000 to 2,000 word articles a month for your client, then you would charge that by 4, $500 by 4, and it'd be $2,000 a month. Talk about technical writing. So if you want to write material such as standard operating procedures, user guides, help guides, booklets, and things like that, that essentially help people use a product or service, then technical writing is just for you. And how people charge for technical writing is pretty similar to the other kinds. You can do it per word, per project, per hour. Once again, depends on you, but what some data has found from Clear Voice is that the average technical writer gets paid about 75 cents per word. So if you write a 10,000 word user guide, that's about $7,500, which is amazing. And that's something you could get done within a month easily. Some other data on technical writing has found they get paid $1 to $2 per word, $50 to $100 an hour, and actually $300 to $12,000 per project. I mentioned journalism a little while ago, so I do want to touch on that again quickly. If you want to write for magazines and publications and get paid for sending them in editorials and opinion pieces, sharing your different advice and insights on different things, then you can get into this side of writing. You can get your name on huge publications like the New York Times, LA Times, magazines like that, and on average they're going to pay you anywhere from 40 cents per word all the way to $3 per word. So imagine you wrote a 2,000 word editorial, you're getting paid $2 per word. That's literally $4,000 from one piece of content. If you want to get a list of 49 websites that accept freelance submissions, go into the description. I actually wrote a blog post and rounded up dozens of magazines that accept freelancers, so you can check that out. Of course, naturally, after you're writing content and copy, you're going to edit, and you may actually want to offer this as a supplementary service, as an upsell. And freelance editing rates typically go for $30 to $60 an hour. Don't get me wrong, it takes a lot of skill and knowledge and strategy to be a good editor, but typically actually writing the bulk of the content or copy is more intense and requires more skill, so you're not going to make as much being a freelance editor, but still pretty fun, and I like throwing it in as an upsell a lot of the time for my clients. Proofreading is pretty similar. You're going to be doing things like looking at the structure of content, rearranging it, mixing in some editing as well, and you can make anywhere from $15 to $40 an hour on average being a freelance proofreader. But don't get me wrong, there actually are some proofreaders that earn $100 an hour or more. So once again, if you're writing content or copy, I'd recommend adding these in as upsells, because then you're just increasing your revenue and income. So now I want to give you some advice for setting your freelance rates if you are a freelance writer watching this. One is to never undercharge, especially in the beginning. I know it's really easy to do free work or just take on anything because you're just starting, but I'd actually recommend you do the opposite. As I recommended earlier, if you're doing copywriting, charge $25 to $50 an hour. You want to make a decent income, and you want to make sure that you're not getting bad referrals and cheap referrals by taking on free work or clients that don't pay you much. Also, when you're doing cheap work, it can be really demotivating, and then you have to stack a lot of different projects just to make a little bit of money. So start charging a bit more. It'll get you more respect from clients. You'll get more respectable businesses that actually value the service, and you just make more money. I've met writers who've been stuck using the same rates for years and years, and they're just spinning their wheels, and they aren't realizing that they just have to start valuing their skill more, change up their branding, and charge more. So if that's a hurdle you're having, actually just try raising your rates, and you'll see a huge difference pretty fast. I know with myself, I like to raise my rates usually every time my portfolio grows, I have more case studies, and I just genuinely improve my skill and confidence in what I can provide. Something else to consider is how much you actually need to pay the bills and live your lifestyle. I think it's a really practical thing to do, to run the numbers on your expenses, your hobbies, everything you do, and then relate that to your income. So your monthly expenses are $2,000. Maybe you could shoot for $4,000 or $5,000 so you can cover all those and still have a lot to save, invest, and do other things. So if you charge $50 an hour, you'd only need to work 40 hours a month, 10 a week to meet that, which isn't too bad. So you can also think about it in a way of finding a balance of working less but still making more and sustaining your lifestyle. So to recap all that, depending on what you're offering or what you're trying to get out of a freelancer, whether it's content writing, editing, copywriting, will change how much you pay. So essentially you can charge or pay on a per word basis. That's really common with journalism and content. You can do per hour, per project, or on a monthly retainer. I recommend pretty much in every circumstance you're doing per project and retainers. It just simplifies everything for both parties, the writer and the business. And something to keep in mind as a business hiring is that you get what you pay for. If you go on Upwork or a lot of places where you're not going to find the big time writers that have their own websites and brands, you're probably going to struggle and have to do a lot of revisions and changes, and it won't be as easy and you won't get as great of results than just hiring a professional copywriter. But of course, that does come at a premium. Do expect to pay $100 an hour or plus, thousands for direct response and things like that. But once again, if you look at it as an investment and you work with the right writer, it will have a good ROI. If you want to learn more about how to set your rates or how much you should charge when you're hiring a content writer or copywriter, go into the description. I'll link some of my other content related to just this topic. Subscribe if you're new to the channel, and I'll catch you in the next video.